Hello, everybody, and welcome to Curtis's Podcast Network. I'm the host of the channel, Curtis Brown, and welcome to We Are Texans Wednesday. Today, we're joined by a very special guest, sports writer for CBS, uh, Jordan Dajani. What's up, man? How are you?
What's going on, Mr. Curtis, man? I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on the show tonight.
Hey, brother. Always happy. Always happy to have you. What, second time on the channel?
Second time, baby.
Hey, I love it. Love it. Uh, yeah, we're going to be talking Texans all day. So, folks, if you're a Texans fan, go ahead and hit the like, subscribe button. If you like reading about football, go check out CBS Sports. Jordan has a lot of things, all of the things on there that you need to read to educate yourself going into this season. It's a pleasure to have you on because I know you're very in depth with what you do and you're very knowledgeable. So let's start it off with a little bit of opinion based. Players you're high on for the Houston Texans.
Yeah, when it comes to the Houston Texans, I mean, this is a young squad. So there's plenty of young talent to choose from, whether it's the quarterback, CJ Stroud, whether it's the second-year running back, Dameon Pierce, the offensive line we could talk about. But, my attention immediately goes to the wide receiving core, right? I mean, Nico Collins, John Mechie's making his return to the field after defeating cancer. It's going to be his true rookie season. Xavier Hutchinson is a guy I kind of want to touch on because he was a guy I was pretty high on in the draft process. In fact, doing my Titans 7-round mock draft, I actually had this guy going third or fourth round. That's how high I was on him. I was taking him a little earlier than all the mock artists out there. So he fell in the draft, which surprised me a little bit, but this guy is not the fastest guy in the field, but I feel like he's a technician. I feel like he's a smooth operator, if you will, when it comes to running routes, when it comes to getting separation, when it comes to getting those 50-50 balls. So he's someone who's kind of caught my attention just through the draft process and watching him at Iowa State. So I'm really excited to see what he can do in terms of a depth piece and if he can get on the field. But the wide receiver, I think I saved the best for last here, is Tank Dell. I'm excited about Tank Dell. He's lacking in size, but I think he makes up for it in potential playmaking ability. So one of the biggest questions I have about the Texans in training camp is watching that budding chemistry between the rookie quarterback Stroud and Tank Dell, because I feel like this guy could be an electric slot weapon if he gets the chance. So, I already did my dynasty fantasy draft with some of my friends back home. I made sure I drafted Tank Dell to get him on my roster because I think that this kid has potential.
Oh, he's got all the potential in the world, and I heard nothing but glowing reviews of this man in camp. I mean, he's small, so he gets bodied a little bit from time to time, but at least in the return game, I think he could be an immediate dynamo there, kind of spelling some of the slot guys. I'm excited for that young man. What are your thoughts about Christian Harris in year two, the linebacker?
Yeah, I don't know if I have. It's hard to understand how it's hard to come up with expectations for this player. I think that the linebacking core in general is something to watch for the Texans, especially when we're talking about D'Amico Ryans, right? And you got guys alongside him such as Denzel Perryman, who I think is going to be a real key when it comes to his development. So he's certainly a player we could talk about in terms of expectations, and he's playing the weak side, right? That's exactly where you guys got him slotted.
Yep.
So, I mean, that's an important part when it comes to coverage as well. So I'm interested to see what he does. But, I haven't studied too much. I haven't heard about him much in training camp, but he's definitely a player to talk about.
Okay. That's fair. That's fair. Let's shift it up a little bit. Let's talk about Colin Cowherd's comments about a young CJ Stroud and some of the rookie crop from the first round this year. For those who don't know, he went on and made like a whole list of 30 quarterbacks that were taken in the first round, I think, in the last 20 years. And he grouped them in stars who are going to get you the ring, guys who are good but not great, and then the largest section, which was 20 guys, was guys who aren't going to get you anywhere. And his defense on CJ Stroud being on the list wasn't even necessarily that he thought he was a bad player. It was that the team around him at this moment isn't sterling like he's used to at Ohio State. So it's going to look rough, at least in the beginning. And then he just kind of goes on to talk about how there's not been a quarterback from Ohio State to really make a dent in the NFL in a very, very long time. And a lot of people are outraged by, obviously, Dwayne Haskins' inclusion in the list. But regardless, I tend actually to agree with him a little bit on it, which is, I guess, a hot take right now, but it makes a little bit of sense when you step back and you realize, Houston's been the bottom of the league the last couple years. And while they've had a lot of draft picks, some of them have not panned out or they haven't been healthy. So it's a lot of ifs and maybes. What do you think?
I mean, you can't really knock the criticism, right? I mean, the Texans are not exactly expected to be competing for Lombardi Trophy in 2023. The Texans have been rebuilding for several years now. I think what makes this an intriguing team this season specifically is that it seems like they're finally on the right track, right? You've got your good head coach hire, in my opinion. I think D'Amico Ryans could end up being the steal of the cycle.
Yeah.
You've got your prospective franchise quarterback. These are pluses. These are reasons to be excited about this team. So, it's a fair criticism. We could talk about the Ohio stuff, Ohio State stuff later, but we saw what Justin Fields did. He showed legitimate franchise quarterback potential. Now, a lot of that production came on the ground as opposed to his arm. I get that. But Stroud was seen by many pundits as one of the safest or the safest quarterback in this class over Bryce Young and over Anthony Richardson. And to be honest with you, I don't know if I can rail against that opinion either. I feel like he might be when it comes to his frame, when it comes to his talent. So when it comes to 2023, what I want to see from Stroud, I want him to show me flashes of franchise quarterback potential. I want him to show fans that they should be excited for what he can do in 2024. I want him to get the fan base excited, right? We're not coming out there and competing, but I want him to show potential that he's working behind this offensive line well. He understands the offensive system. He's creating chemistry with this wide receiver. I want to see some really, really damn good flashes in 2023.
Yeah. Yeah. That's one hell of a take right there. It's beautiful. Very well worded. Kind of stumped me. I'm not going to lie to you.
Am I freezing? Am I freezing? Is my frame freezing?
Every now and then, but it catches
Okay.
back up periodically.
Gotcha.
So, okay. Now, the Ohio State aspect of it, which a lot of people will call lazy, a lazy take, or they'll make exceptions because some of those quarterbacks weren't taken very highly. But even still, you got 3 first-round draft picks, a bunch of dudes who were taken in the third, and then even more that were taken later. I mean, Troy Smith was a Heisman winner, All-American, a unanimous All-American in 2006, and was taken in the 5th round by the Ravens. I don't even he maybe played like 4 games his entire career. Can you call that guy a bust? In the sense, no, but in another sense, I mean, you're drafted with the expectation of eventually playing at a high level, if or to the highest of your ability, I guess. Um, do you think that there's any actual merit to the idea that Ohio State quarterbacks are not translatable to the NFL?
No, I think that's a little bit lazy. I mean, I tried to look at the player, not exactly the helmet, not the team they come from. And, we could talk about Cardell Jones. We could talk about Dwayne Haskins. But, Justin Fields, I feel like kind of shifted the narrative just a little bit. And again, he has a lot to prove when it comes to his arm. I get that. But he still was an electric playmaker at the quarterback position, and he has that fan base excited. So I feel like he began to shift the narrative just a little bit. So, yes, when you describe that as lazy, I can get a little bit on board with that. But again, I'm more excited for what these individual players can do, whether it's Justin Fields, whether it's CJ Stroud. I'm not going to put too much stock into that.
Okay. Fair point. What was it? Crap. There was something I was going to say in response to that, but it's gone now. Let's go offensive line depth. We brought in a lot of players. Shaq Mason was brought in via trade. We gave him an extension. We got Titus Howard locked in at right tackle for the next 3 or 4 years with an extension. We drafted Juice Scruggs and Jarrett Patterson to be centers and guard depth. Kenyon Green, we're hoping, takes a step forward, and we have Laramie Tunsil. Now, beyond that, if any of those guys get hurt, I'm a little on the oh crap fence with that. Where are you at?
Yeah, I think depth is probably somewhat of an issue when it comes to the Texans' offensive front. But To be honest with you, there's not a lot of teams in the NFL where we can say, oh, yeah, they've got plenty of offensive depth. I mean, when it comes to positions and premier positions, whether it's pass rusher, quarterback, wide receiver, that's fine. But there's also premier position groups. And I would
Right.
consider the offensive line to be one of those. And I mean, looking around the league, who has the deepest offensive line, right? I mean, you probably can't even come up with five names for the deepest offensive line. So it's a problem that a lot of teams deal with, in my opinion. I mean, I'm in Nashville. I think the Titans can say the same exact thing. Our starting right tackle went down with a gambling suspension, and that threw everything into flux. So with the offensive front with the Texans, I've been really focused on just who's going to be the starting five, and that issue itself has been in flux with Titus Howard going down with the injury. I think Questenberry, right? He had the torn
Yep.
ACL, MCL. He got carted off the field. So your left tackle set with Laramie Tunsil. You're excited about that. Kenyon Green, some question marks. Obviously, his PFF grade was trash last year, but
Yeah.
everyone's expecting him to take a jump forward. It seems like Juice Scruggs is going to be the center, right? It's not going to be
Yep.
Patterson. It won't be Dieter, I guess. So it's good to have that guy finalized. Shaq Mason, as you mentioned, Titus Howard.
Yeah.
Behind that, yeah, there's obviously stuff you could. It's lacking a little bit in depth, but you got George Fant, who's a backup tackle, and I'm excited about that because that's a guy I wanted in Tennessee. Michael Dieter's a guy who's been around the league a little bit. I remember him playing with the Dolphins. He's kind of been a little versatile when it comes to where he plays on the inside. I know that he's definitely played some center. Who else you got? Jimmy Morrissey, I think, is another guy who's listed
Yep.
at the guard position. So, yeah, I mean, I would say that depth is lacking just a little bit. You really hold your breath and hope that no one else goes down. And Titus Howard going down with that hand injury is certainly not something you want to see. But yeah, I mean, I think offensive line depth is going to be a big question mark with all 32 teams.
I mean, yeah, fair point. I just with the injuries that have already happened, I mean, Titus Howard broke his hand. He's going to be expected to miss 4 to 6 weeks. As you mentioned, Quesenberry getting carted off the field. We're already getting into the depth part of the offensive line, and it's early. And as you mentioned, yeah, the Titans are going through it too with NPF and trying to bring in dudes like Hubbard to fill in over there. But I don't know. I'm worried that the offensive line is not going to give CJ Stroud any chance of anything.
And to your point, I mean,
Injuries be hurting.
it's incredibly important more for the fact of you have a rookie quarterback, right? And you want to make sure that his learning curve and his growing pains aren't more than they should be for any rookie, right? And if you can have a
Right.
stable offensive line, a top end offensive line, then your development's going to be quicker with that rookie quarterback, right? They're going to have more time to see the field. They're going to be more comfortable going through progression. So, yeah, it's a good question, and it's obviously a good worry to have.
Yeah. The wide receiver room, we already touched on it a little bit with Mechie making his comeback after beating cancer. Nico Collins being looked at to take a step forward. And of course, Tank Dell and Xavier Hutchinson. But all of these guys, to me, you can look at a rookie any way you want, but they're question marks until they get on the field. Like it's a whole other ball game when the actual lights are on and you're out there playing dudes who are getting paid a lot of money. Um, I'm worried about the depth in the wide receiver room because it's Robert Woods and then a lot of guys who have to prove stuff. And usually that doesn't pan out, but maybe for a couple guys. So who are your odds on favorite to be like the three wide receivers day one?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I'm kind of almost leaning opposite of you. Like I feel like I'm hoping that depth is there with the Texans wide receiver room, but I'm more questioning the top end talent, right? I feel like we've got a number of guys who can play, but how many guys do we have that are legitimate starters at this level? That's my question. And you asked me what are the top three wide receivers going to be? Well, it's tough because Robert Woods, I was very surprised that you gave him the contract that you did after last year. Listen, I know he's coming off of an ACL, but he's over 30 years old now. I'm sure that his best playing days are behind him. So I'm wondering if he really can be a number one wide receiver. How impactful is he truly going to be with Houston? So I know a lot of people are high on Nico Collins. Hopefully he can be a legitimate outside threat. You've got a couple of slot guys like John Mechie III and Tank Dell. And I'm kind of interested to see where exactly they shift in, right, when it comes to working the field together. Are they going to work the field together? Who's going to be that starter in the slot? probably met you because I mean he's had at least a year in that system. Well, not system, but he has a year with the franchise at least. He's more
Yeah.
familiar with the Texans than a rookie. But one guy that I do like is probably Noah Brown from the Cowboys. I thought he was somewhat of an underrated pickup. He was someone that covering teams maybe like Titans and the Washington Commanders that I was looking at as somewhat of a depth piece that I would like. Noah Brown could be a sleeper in this wide receiver room. He definitely showed some flashes with the Cowboys when he was given those opportunities. And with such a young wide receiving core with the Texans, I think he's going to be given those opportunities as well. So Noah Brown's a guy to watch.
Okay. Defensive line, specifically the interior of the defensive line. We've got Sheldon Rankins and Malik Collins, two guys who are at least average to above average starters at this point in their careers. And then after that, it's guys who have not performed very well. I am very worried about the depth in the interior defensive line outside of the fact that we just re-signed Malik Collins to like a 3-year extension and Rankins. How do you feel about the interior D-line depth?
Well, I kind of like the starters, like you said, but yeah, I do think it's lacking in depth. You got Hassan Ridgeway, right? He's on the interior at the defensive tackle position.
I believe so.
I think he's someone who has some experience with the 49ers. I could be wrong about that. So D'Amico Ryans at least knows who this guy is. I'm going to have to look that up to double check, but I'm pretty sure he's on the roster as well. So, yeah, I would agree with you that the depth seems to be lacking. This is another situation where you hope that those starters can not only be impactful, but remain healthy as well. So Sheldon Rankin, and Malik Collins are going to be your two guys. And I feel like they can hold their own in the interior of the defensive line. But yeah, I would agree that depth is an issue as well.
Okay. I mean, Malik Collins has yet to play an entire season for us. He's missed a couple games here and there in the 2 years he's been here. That's why I'm worried about all of these, is because a lot of these guys, like Nico Collins in the wide receiver room, has yet to play a full 17 game season. And I know that's an issue for a lot of teams, but we're looking for these guys to step up and potentially be, the guy going forward. And I don't know, with all of the injury history of a lot of these rooms, that it's actually going to be quite as. There's a lot of Texans fans that think this season is going to be above a 7-win season. They're talking about potentially dethroning the Jags as AFC South champions. I just don't share that level of optimism about it. 7 wins is a good ceiling, but anything above that's gravy.
Yep, I would agree with that. By the way, Ridgeway was with San Francisco last year, so he does have experience with D'Amico Ryans. He was on the Eagles beforehand and the Colts, I believe. He spent time there as well, 28 years old. But yeah, in terms of expectations for the Texans, I was looking over their schedule before I hopped on with you, and I think I came to the conclusion that maybe 5 or 6 wins is where I'm kind of landing right now. And I went over to Vegas over at Caesars Sportsbook, and I saw that their line for win total for the Texans, what would you guess it is if Vegas has drawn a line? How many regular season wins for Houston?
I haven't looked, so I'm a guess like 6.
6.5, exactly. And the over is at plus money. So Vegas is leaning towards the underside of 6, which is funny because that's exactly where I landed. But it's cool to have those expectations and those hopes. There's no doubt about it. And like I said, the Texans finally seem like they're on the right track when it comes to this rebuild. But man, 2023 is just about getting those flashes from those young players and establishing that you have those building blocks. That's what I want to see. I don't care if they only win 2 games. If CJ Stroud can show that he can be a franchise quarterback, that's going to be a win to me. I mean, look what happened with Chicago last year. That team got gutted for trade assets. They were the worst team in the league. They got the number 1 overall pick. I'm not saying that's going to happen with Houston, but what happened was Justin Fields at least showed some potential. That's one of my number 1 things when it comes to this season is hopefully that Stroud can do some of the same things. I want to see the same flashes from the wide receiving core. And I'm just hoping for some level of improvement from the defensive side of the ball, since that obviously is where D'Amico Ryans makes his money. They were pretty bad last year on that side of the ball. So I'm hoping to see some improvement just because of D'Amico. So I think 7 wins would be a huge win for the Texans this year, but I'm going to lean to the under on that.
See, you're talking logic right now, and I'm here for it. All right. There was a God. Who was it? It was somebody put out like a top 10 defenses projection for uh, 2023 or whatever, and it's Houston and Tennessee making the list at Houston at 10 and Tennessee at number 9. I can't remember who put out the list, but how does that make you feel?
Someone's enjoying talking season too much. That's what it makes me feel like. I mean,
Yeah.
I like I like some of the additions that Houston made on defense, right? I mean, Will Anderson Jr. is a guy we haven't touched on yet. I feel
Yep.
like he's going to be a legitimate stud. I talked to that guy right the week of the draft, and he he's like the model of consistency, but he's also the model of versatility when it comes to what he did at Alabama. And I know he's going to be that 4-3 defensive end in Houston, which I'm really excited to see. Put your hand on the dirt, get after the quarterback. So what he's going to be able to do with D'Amico Ryans, hopefully they found their own version of Nick Bosa and Will Anderson Jr. Denzel Perryman, we kind of touched on. Jimmy Ward, I think, is going to be a really fun chess piece for D'Amico. Shaquille Griffin is another guy that I really wanted in Tennessee, to be honest with you. A former Jacksonville Jag, who was kind of a cap casualty, maybe not legitimate starter, but definitely a depth piece who won in the secondary. I mean, they're not going to be a top 10 defense. That's just how I feel right now in terms of what I'm looking at with the roster. With D'Amico Ryans, you're going to have that upside. You're hoping that you're on the right track to becoming statistically a top 10 defense. But right away, 2023, it's kind of hard to judge that. I mean, Tennessee, I think they have some kind of hope of being up there. It all kind of hinges on health, of course. I really do like their front seven. They made some additions in the secondary, but the secondary is still not what I would consider to be elite. Maybe the Titans' identity is going to reside on that side of the ball. But as far as the Texans, if they're at number 16, I think that would be a big upgrade compared to last year.
Oh God, anything above last year would be great.
Right.
Allowing almost 3,000 yards on the ground, like just shy of 3,000 yards on the ground. That's insane.
Yeah.
Oh God, it was abysmal to watch last year. Um, um, is there anybody that we haven't talked about yet that you're a little high on, or anything? Because I think we've
Um,
done pretty comprehensive coverage at this point.
I think we did, except for me not really knowing much about Christian Harris. I think we did a solid
Yeah.
job. But give me your go ahead and give me your breakdown of Christian Harris because I was unable to do so.
Well, look, Christian Harris is fast. He reads the play a little wrong a lot, and he's not very good at tackling. That was his biggest thing. Is he would get there, and be in position to make the play, would never make the play. What I'm looking for him is D'Amico Ryans to just rub off that elite linebacker mentality that D'Amico Ryans still has to this day and walks around with. Uh, that's the only way that I think that he's going to end up being uh, an actual starting caliber player and not somebody who's kind of on the fringe. Um, I don't know. It's going to take a lot of tackling dummies to make that man a little bit better at tackling, but I think he's smart. I think he can read the field well. It's a matter of getting that form down. And God, if he's playing the will, then what? He'll be dropping back probably most of the time.
Exactly. And I mean, when you're dropping back and you're playing that weak side, it's going to give you that positioning to be in the open field, to make those plays, to in terms of, as you mentioned, be in the right place at the right time. And sometimes when it comes to prospects, that's kind of the hardest part of it. And when you put yourself in the right position, you can learn how to make that tackle. But being natural when it comes to your ability to find the ball, that's something that is a legitimate quality when it comes to defenders. See, that was a lot better of a breakdown than I could give about the linebacker Christian Harris. But I got another question for you too. I mean, Kenyon Green, right, playing left guard, did not have that good of a rookie season. But I've seen a lot of fans make excuses for whether it was injuries, whether it was lack of consistency when it comes to the starters on the offensive line with things changing like that. They're expecting a big improvement in year two. What do you think about him?
Well, like you mentioned before when we had touched on him, the PFF grade being so garbage, I think there was like 6 or 7 games in a row that he started where he ended up having at least one holding call. Um, it was really bad. It could have been the fact that we played a lot of top 10 defensive lines. It could have been the fact that he missed most of training camp his rookie year. He did get injured during the season a couple times, but he got benched several times because he was playing badly. They sent in Justin McCray. What is going to help him is going back to the basics, tune out the noise, or let it fuel you. Either one. You can either tune it out or let it fuel you. But he needs to be in the hip pocket of Laramie Tunsil, asking him questions and trying to figure out what it is that Laramie Tunsil does so that he can replicate it. He's got a great role model in that. If he's smart and he's dedicated, he's going to be in there asking that man all the questions he possibly can. That's honestly the best way he's going to get better. My expectations, if he was the worst guard in the NFL last year, I want him to be like 10 spots above that this year, and then 10 spots above that next year, and then just slowly climb up. And if I can see that, just steady improvement out of that, I mean, it was basically like watching Dennis Daly out there. Like, and everybody in Tennessee knows exactly what I'm talking about. That it was awful. Uh, yeah, my expectations are that he will get out of the cellar this year. That he'll actually take some strides and not hold quite so frequently and screw up most of our drives.
I got one more player I need your opinion on, and this is probably someone that I'm sure your listeners have been wondering about. You guys went out and got a new tight end this offseason. In
Dalton
state,
Schultz. Oh
Dalton
yeah.
Schultz. I feel like I have not heard too much about him throughout preseason training camp. What are expectations for him in this offense? Because I feel like having a legitimate, reliable, yet versatile security blanket is a huge asset for any rookie quarterback. So Dalton Schultz, especially at the money you got him at, could be one of the more underrated additions of the entire offseason.
I couldn't agree more. I don't know why he's not being talked about more. Maybe because he's not practicing. I think he and the backup tight end are also injured. Um, so we actually had to bring in a couple other tight ends to kind of fill out practice for a while. It's nothing crazy. He'll be back in like a week or two, but no, my expectations for Dalton Schultz are very simple. Go out there and be what CJ Stroud needs you to be, open and available. If you can do those two things, you're probably going to end up being one of the best Texans tight ends for a 1-year stint if we can't re-sign him. At least on paper, he's probably up there with Owen Daniels before he even takes a snap in terms of like Texans tight ends. But realistically, if he can come out and get, 50, 60 catches, probably about 700 yards, 7, 8 touchdowns, that is a phenomenal year. And I will take that after years and years of god awful tight end play where all of the tight ends in the room collectively don't even have that stat line. That could be, quarterback play, but, just generally bad tight end play. And the fact that he can block, my God. Oh, my God. He can block. I was excited when we got him. I'm excited still. I think he's going to be great. I think there's definitely some linebacker units on the franchise or on the schedule that we're going to be able to exploit with him. I don't think the Titans linebacking room, at least in the outside of Shire, is super great.
Azeez Al-Shaair, man. Yeah, I'm excited about that dude.
Oh, he's talented, but I don't really like the depth in that room either. But that's neither here nor there. Yeah, I think he's going to be pretty solid. Yeah, you're right. I don't know why nobody's talking about him. It's criminal. Well, I think we're kind of up against it time wise, so I'm gonna go ahead and wrap it here. Jordan, thanks for coming on, brother. Still owe you a beer. Folks at home, hit the like and subscribe button and be good people. Oh, and please check out CBS Sports, and everything that Jordan Dajani has ever written.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Not a problem. Be good.